not ding the bell at your head if I don't have to. Good morning. Can you hear me? I'm always being accused of being too soft. Oh, I was gonna, but I thought if I said, can you hear me, that people would be quiet. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to our Unitarian Universalist congregation of Traverse City Sunday service for today. As Unitarian Universalist, our first and most important principle is to honor the inherent dignity of every person. So each of you are welcome here. My name is Ann Stevenson, and I am a member of our Sunday Services Committee. And yes, I did take it on the chin a couple days ago, and I stumbled on a cat toy on my way to get a drink of water. And no, I don't have a hormone issue that's causing me to have whiskers under my chin. Those are the little stick-outs left over from the stitches. So if you examine my injuries, please be aware that that's going on. Our minister, Dan, has asked to speak with you for a few moments, and then I have a couple of announcements to correct, and we'll be on our way.
Good morning, everyone. So good to be with you for a third week of observation of our community. And I am now out of the Residence Inn at the Marriott and settled comfortably at our new apartment in downtown. But I primarily wanted to just give you that update, but also to do the most important thing that I may do during my ministry. Renee West is my wife of 28 years. We were married in May of 1998, and she is a Renaissance woman of all kinds, being knowledgeable about everything from anthropology to English, the most well-read human being I know. But we are piloting a process of seeing each other on a regular cadence by going back and forth, given the limited time that my contract is with UUCGT. But Renee will be with us on occasion, and as that will happen, you'll notice a corresponding jump in my step and energy in my heart and delight generally. But I just wanted to take a minute to allow Renee to say hello. I know that while she's here, she'll want to be as integrated and part of our lovely congregation as she is able. But please, for just a second, if you'll indulge us, this is Renee West.
Hello, it's so lovely to meet all of you. I understand that you have been most gracious, most kind to my husband as he's made the transition here. And so I am already so fond of you for that. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. I know that I'll meet more of you after this service. This is lovely. Traverse City is lovely. I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple of announcements this morning that are not in your order of service. One is from our Justice Network. They will have Mary Jo Eberts from the State UU Social Justice Network, who will give an update on ballot issues this Tuesday at 2 p.m. at the Social Justice Zoom meeting. Everyone is welcome to join. Contact Steve Sanders, Mary Van Valen, or Mike Radke, or stop by the Social Justice Association table during social hour, and you can obtain the Zoom link that way. The other announcement is from Marginalized Voices. Marginalized Voices is a UU book club that reads fiction by people who may be considered marginalized, oppressed, or isolated from the benefits of the majority. Input includes Black, Indigenous, LGBTQ+, disabled, immigrant, and peoples from other countries. We meet on the fourth Monday of the month from September through May at UUCGT here in our library. If you are interested in joining, please see Candace Lee or Misty Sheehan. Thank you. Today, we have the opportunity to experience Celtic spirituality. The more expansive and grace-filled spirituality, which was in practice by the 5th century, adopted by many in Scotland and Ireland as a more accepting and loving alternative to the Roman Catholicism of the day. We are fortunate to have Pastor Chris Lane taking our pulpit today to guide us in an exploration of this ancient, compassionate spirituality, which expresses gratitude toward nature and all its magnificent qualities. Pastor Lane, for those of you unfamiliar with him, served as senior minister along with his life partner, Pastor Jane Lippert, who provided our sermon last week. They were both with Central United Methodist Church of Traverse City for 14 years, so you may have heard or know of them. They are the proud parents of 2 strong women. Now living in Manistee, Pastor Lane feels very privileged to work with the local conservancy by watering and caring for the giant sequoia trees at Lake Bluff Farms in Manistee. I'm sure they have had some conversations, and I imagine he acquired some wisdom from them. In addition to many worthy volunteer activities, he and Jane regularly work helping local first graders. Welcome, Pastor Lane. If you are a visitor today and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. We do this to assure our online listeners will be able to hear you. Do we have any visitors today? Okay, Diane will bring you a microphone.
My name is Emily Sweet, and I don't believe I've been here since maybe 50 years ago. So I'm back. I moved back from Arizona about 4 months ago, and so I decided to come today, see what you're all about again. So thank you.
Thank you for coming, and you're welcome. Following the service, please join us in the social hall for treats and conversation. If you would please choose a yellow mug, although you're pretty distinctive, we would still be able to recognize you and introduce ourselves to you and get to know you a bit better. Sharing our joys and concerns with this beloved community helps us to stay connected with each other. Your joys and concerns may be written in the book on the table to your left, and you're welcome to add to the book and or light a candle at any time before or during the service. Your joys and concerns will be shared by Carl Knath of the congregational care team, just a little later in our service. Now is our time to quiet our minds, quiet our devices, and be fully present with one another as we worship. It's time for the chalice lighting. Do you want music before that? Yes, I'm sorry, it's my fault.
Good morning. I've chosen my opening words and closing words to come from the great Irish poet John O'Donoghue, who left this world way too soon about 20 years ago. May this be our intention for how we will share this morning. May you and I enter this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in our awareness, courageous in thought of others who are suffering today, and then generous in our love. May it be so.
As Minister Lane lights our chalice this morning, let us call to mind that the chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalists everywhere. It represents the light of reason and the warmth of community. Please join me in affirming our covenant found in the back of your order of service. I am accountable for me. You are accountable for you. In community, we hold each other through joy and conflict. We will open up as we respond to the needs of the world.
Would you please rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing this morning's opening hymn, Morning Has Broken, found in your gray hymnal, number 38. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first word. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
I'm Carl Kyneth, a member of the Congregational Care Team. It is our practice as a religious community to set aside time in our service to name and honor the joys and concerns that mark our lives, the milestones and moments of our lived experience. I will be sharing the joys and concerns that have been offered up for us to hold in our hearts as we are gathered today. If you have a joy or concern that's a bit too heavy to share, I invite you to reach out to a member of the Congregational Care Team. You can identify us by the purple ribbons on our name tags. You can also light a candle at any time during the service to honor your joy or concern, or our stone meditation, knowing that you are held in the loving hearts of this community. So now we say it together. None of us is meant to travel life's journey alone. Here is what has been shared with us today. Frank Swinehart has concern for family and friends in towns of Cooksville, Roseville, and New Lexington, Ohio, in Perry County that have been flooded twice this last week. And Tristan has a joy because I got a power wheelchair for longer outings, and in the last week I've been able to take my dog for a hike, go shopping downtown, and attend the craft fair at the Commons. And now let's hold a moment of stillness for the concerns and joys that remain in this silence and in our hearts. Friends, as we continue with our time of joys and concerns, we now open our time for the stone meditation. As you feel moved, you're invited to come forward to take a stone and place it in the bowl of water. This is not a time for words, but a chance to bring what is on your heart into our circle of community, trusting that it is held in love and care. As you feel ready, please come forward.
please join me in singing our song of response, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
I was moved by your stone and water ritual. May it be like casting what is limitation into something deep and vast and beyond our understanding, which is akin to Celtic spirituality. Because as I hope you'll pick up in some of the readings and remarks and just quiet this morning, there is something deep and rich and good in love with creation, offering healing. I offer a few words as the reading this morning from J. Philip Newell, who has written extensively about the Celtic path for us around the world, not just in the UK. A paragraph of his for our hearing today. But what does it mean to be made in the image of God? What does it mean to say that the garden is our place of deep identity? In part, it is to say that wisdom is deep within us, deeper than the ignorance of what we have done or become. It is to say that the passion of God for what is just and right is deep within, deeper than any apathy or participation in wrong that has crippled us. To be made in the image of God is to say that creativity is at the core of our being, deeper than any barrenness that has dominated our lives and relationships. And above all, it is to say that love and the desire to give ourselves away to one another in love is at the heart of who we are, deeper than any fear or hatred that holds us hostage. Yes, deep within us is a longing for union, for our genesis is in the one from whom all things have come. Our home is the garden, and deep within us is the yearning to hear its song again. A reading.
I'm sorry. The offering. Oh, sorry. Today, I have put a little bit of Celtic symbolism to explore on our settings table. The pink primroses are blooms that bloom in the spring in the Scottish lands. They bloom everywhere. They bloom along the riverbanks, the hedgerows, throughout the forests, bringing a childlike wonder as they signify the transition from dark, cold months into the light and warmth of spring. They bloom in many colors, but I have chosen the pink primrose for our settings table today. It represents the warding off of evil expression and replace those evil expressions with an open-hearted grace. If only carrying flowers could be that powerful. What a wonderful world it would be. The Scottish Celtic cross, here in two different, and then also Minister Lean brought one down here that's a picture. These two are made from different materials, but they are identical in their setup and symbolism. They have 4 arms, which may represent north, south, east, and west, or they may represent matter, earth, water, and air in Celtic lore. They are strengthened in Celtic crosses by that circle. As some of the slides that may be shown today demonstrate, the strength and stability of this design as it endures for centuries in many natural settings, such as braving the winds directly from the Pacific Ocean and enduring centuries of weather pummeling into it. We cannot ignore the intricate knotwork. We've all heard of the Celtic knot, but the intricate knotwork in the cross is a continuous knotwork. It reminds us of the interconnectedness of all beings throughout time without ending. So when you see that scrolling, it doesn't have an end. Wonderful symbolism, I think. Our beautiful building and our inspiring surroundings, as you can see from the window, so carefully tended by our Sacred Grounds and Landscaping Committee, it frequently reminds me I am so appreciative for the generation of this congregation, because our offerings are the total source of funds to maintain this building and grounds and to pay our exceptionally gifted and talented staff. We have no additional sources of income. As the ushers pass the baskets, you will observe there are 2 sides. One is for the life and mission of our congregation, and the other is for supporting local programs for the most vulnerable in our community. Should you be watching online, you may send your offering using one of the methods shown on the slide. If you choose one of these, please note if your gift is for supporting the congregation or for supporting community needs. If you are visiting or new today, you may let the basket pass. Your presence is gift enough for us.
I think hearing your heart could be worship enough this day. Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you. I'm delighted to be back here after being with you last summer. If you remember, I was a part of the road show last summer too. In fact, I was joking with my wife Jane of, last summer I kind of talked about the earthy spirituality of John Muir, and here I'm talking about this very earth-based Celtic spirituality today. It kind of one is building on the other. Maybe I can make a whole 4 or 5 part series out of it. It'll just take 5 years to do it with the UU folks. We'll see what happens. I come as a retired United Methodist clergy. I consider myself spiritually a Christ follower, but in some ways also a Druid, and I'll speak to that a little bit more. But I will say up front, I am an unapologetic tree hugger and tree talker. I'm privileged to get to water sequoia trees that are on the north edge of Manistee. Here's my plug. If you have not been there, friends, you have to go and feel this radiating energy that comes from the 3 sequoias that are still on the land. Is this family, if you knew the Morton family that made their millions off of Morton table salt, part of their family owned this little house and grounds around it. And when the last member of the family was about to pass on, they bequeathed it to the Audubon Society and this little nonprofit that I work with. And as the story goes, the family went to California in the 40s and brought back some seedlings of sequoia trees, and one has just really flourished. She's almost 80 years old and grows about 4 feet a year. And to just walk up and touch the bark of this tree is a spiritual encounter. To touch something that might live 300, 400 years. I've gotten into the practice. There's a lot of smaller sequoias that also need water. Sequoias take a lot of water, especially in this dry summer we've had in northern Michigan. And I've come into the practice of speaking. And sometimes I'll just name St. Patrick's breastplate blessing, encouraging growth and the earth to cooperate with the tree's growth. I imagine some of you may do that in your gardens also, huh? Doesn't hurt to talk to other living things. I'm excited, though, to also reflect with you this morning on the gifts of the Celtic spiritual path, as Jane and I will have opportunity in about a week to go to Scotland, the Middle Hebrides, to the island of Iona, which is really considered across the UK one of those magnificent thin places where it feels like you're touching something beyond this material realm just to walk that island, and to be around the Celtic standing crosses that Anne referred to some of them. And if you can appreciate, some of these great stone crosses have been standing for more than 10 centuries with the buffeting Atlantic winds of the ocean coming, and still they stand. So I want to begin with just having a couple of images for us to consider. Jeff, let's see that first image of what we call the UK plus Ireland. And the little star up here is the little Middle Hebrides island of Iona that we'll be going to. But just want you to appreciate kind of where that is up in the north. And part of what's important, some of my remarks might sound a little bit like a history lesson or a geography lesson mixed in with the spirituality, because it is good to notice this boundary marker where Scotland and England meet, because in the early centuries where the Roman Empire was at its height, Emperor Hadrian decided to build this 170 mile earthworks to create, it's not exactly on the border, but it's very close, Hadrian's Wall. And you'll hear me talk a little bit about why was that done, but it definitely isolated more the folks in the north who kind of wanted to be isolated from the Roman Empire. Thank you very much. Let's see the next image. And a lot is told about Saint Columba in this graphic created for him. Saint Columba, a little controversial as so much in church history is, that he was banished from Ireland as a priest, and some say excommunicated, over, might sound silly to you and me, a copyright infringement thing, as he was hand copying some sacred texts and wanted to copy for himself, not just for the bishops. And whatever, it was found out, he was kind of brought to a trial and told he would have to leave Ireland as a priest. And he was told to take his little coracle, that's the little rowing boat covered with skins, and paddle as far as he could until he could no longer see the coast of Ireland. And there he would be allowed to stay. And by his reckoning and navigation, that took him to Iona, which was just beyond the site of his beloved homeland of Ireland. And that's where he and his disciples, his protégés, set up a community that came to be known for many things, one of which is thought that the Book of Kells, that incredible calligraphied copy of the Gospels that now is at Trinity College in Dublin, that either the drawings begin with that or that ethic and aesthetic of art within the Bible began with Columba and his disciples on Iona. So a lot of rich history is going on there. Let's see the next image. This is the cross of St. Martin. That's one of the standing crosses that's on the island that I was so moved when I went. I'll show you, if you're kind, my tattoo on my arm of St. Martin's cross. Part of what gives it gravity to me is in missiology of the Catholic Church, St. Martin is thought to be the first conscientious objector in the Roman army who decided, I cannot take life. And he suffered consequences for that, but he is also honored in history since then. And this cross stands just outside the Abbey building on Iona, facing the Atlantic for all who come. So it's a very special place. And finally, one more image. St. Bridget. St. Bridget, who's more claimed by the Irish, but certainly across Ireland and Scotland and Wales as well. St. Bridget is the patron saint of Ireland and poets and dairymaids and blacksmiths and healers and cattle and fugitives and midwives and newborn babies. That's quite a workload, I think. But I'm just going to leave Bridget up for the remainder of my remarks because one thing that is an earmark of Celtic spirituality is this great appreciation of both masculine and feminine energy. And a lot of women, as you'll see, were the carriers of blessing that marked this way of relating to a creator, that the loving presence of creator is really infused in all things if we will just notice. And she's holding her St. Bridget's cross, which is created from weeds and rushes, but makes the statement that even the most common thing can be a portal of the sacred. And then holding a flame and fire of the Spirit is in all things. So just something to think about as we're there. So, because the Celtic people of Northwest Europe were a bit out of the reach of Roman Empire authorities and the Roman Church, and think about Hadrian's Wall there, they chose to honor their autonomy from the Roman Church. And as often happens where political power uses the religion of the church to subdue people, that's kind of what the Roman Empire was doing. So when the Romans figured out, that's so far up there, plus those infidels and those hicks that live up there, why do we even want to mess with them? So in this sort of apathy about the far reaches of the north, it became this freedom for the Celts to live out their earth-based spirituality, even the ones who converted to Christianity, to hold both of those traditions together as a synthesis. So as Christianity arrived to the Celtic communities, they were able for many centuries to find this beautiful synthesis of the ancient practices and beliefs that they had held in the land alongside the Christian understanding of God's message of divine presence and that everyone had an eternal belonging together. So in the title for this talk this morning, I refer to Celtic spirituality as a third way, if you will. And I thought this would be a way to come at it because it kind of avoids the bookends of some extremity of religious expression. So think with me here, a third way. If on one end that they work to avoid is in religious expression is when people give over all their inner authority to a gatekeeping clergy person or a person who's telling you what certainties and absolutes you're to have in your life, something that you folks have very boldly avoided, right? You trust the light that's in each of you, kind of like the Celts. Or at the other extreme, thankfully, the Celts managed to avoid a highly individualistic approach to God and spirit, where I might cobble together my own approach to the world that's purely emotional and I'm at the center, not really concerned with my neighbor. One is all externalized authority. One is purely based on emotion and feeling. And the Celts have this third way. Of course, no spiritual practice contains truth completely or perfectly, but the early Christian Celts were able to see the presence of the divine in a relationship with nature that stressed humility and revelation. You know, part of what makes this Celtic path a little different from some other paths is not only might they speak to the tree, but they would wait to see what the tree wants to say back. It was a dialogue with creation. They maintained rich spiritual practices, meditation and prayer, speaking blessing, communing with nature, caring for those in need, a great sense of hospitality. You know, the stranger who comes to your door is the Christ. How will you receive them and meet their needs? And on top of all of that, this great poetic use of the imagination. There are such great Irish and Scottish bards and poets and musicians, and it survives in their art and their music to this day. The Celts believed men and women are equally able to inspire and lead and participate in all manner of community building and spiritual practice. A woman is as able to be priestly as a man. Can I get an amen? Amen. And you better believe that troubled Rome. We think of Celts in relation to the British Isles, but really, their previous manifestation of the Picts really were in much of Europe. But we most think about that migration pattern of moving to Northwest Europe and the British Isles, because that's where Celtic culture and language seem to survive the longest, again, mostly due to this isolation and the protectiveness that happened with all these little islands up there. And in fact, as Jane and I prepare to go to the Middle Hebrides, we've already been told, don't expect that the way they speak Gaelic or even Americanized Scottish on one island will be like the next island. There's still this autonomy between the little islands that are up there. Irish and Scottish Gaelic are the most common languages associated with Celtic people that remain in use still today. We have very little in the way of real information about the religious practices of the Celts before the arrival of Christianity. It's like many early religious expressions that were more oral, the way they were passed on from one generation to another. But something, writers and researchers agree, something unique happened in the British Isles that didn't happen in other places where the Roman Empire imported Christianity and used religion to subdue people. So in Ireland and Scotland and Wales, especially those who converted to Christianity, kept much of their previous belief system. Their deities became holy women and men, Brigid, became Saint Bridget, for instance. And their festivals intertwined with Christian feasts. And in many places, Christianity had erased the previous religious practices of a people. Sounds familiar with what happened here with Native Americans in our country in religion, doesn't it? But in the British Isles, something far more organic took place. So we see the Roman Empire never fully claimed much of the British Isles. It was just too far out there. Because of that quirk of politics, early Christian church in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, mostly free of the influence of the headquarters in Rome. Their calendars were different. Their clergy and monks in the Celts followed different rules of life. Marriage and having children in the monastic order was tolerated and celebrated, for instance. The way people prayed and spoke to trees and celebrated the seasons of the year and the movement of their everyday lives differed from the Christianity of continental Europe. But it wasn't to stay that way, as Rome came in with a heavy hand before long. The year was 664 AD. For in 664, the Synod of Whitby was held, supposedly to standardize Christian practice across all the British Isles. Bring those roustabouts into order here. But anyone who knows the Celts will know that that's not entirely what happened. That unique practice of Celtic Christianity continued, often in homes and in folk songs and stories, if not in church itself. They'd still speak incantations and blessings. They'd still address their dead ancestors as if they were still alive in conversation, still having wisdom to impart. And in that way, women, it was the women who especially kept these old practices in current form. So maybe you've noticed Celtic spirituality has kind of had a renewal. Kind of more people have kind of warmed up to some of this Druid energy. And what do you make of that? There are several theories that are out there, but I have a theory. I want you to think about how in Western spirituality in the last 100 years or so, the dominant religious traditions of the West have stripped, for the most part, a sense of mystery and unknowing and contemplative silence just to be present with the holy. Evangelical Christians have chucked, seemed most everything that's not based on certitude, and instead an intellectual assent to a list of absolute statements of belief. While a lot of modern Christianity still relies on feelings, whatever personal relationship with Jesus, still the center of religious practice is about a very finite sense of self and a list of beliefs held to. Not everyone, I realize that might sound like sweeping generalizations, but I see Christian nationalism based on that kind of certitude of who's right, who's wrong, who's in, who's out, stripped of mystery. So for many modern Western Christians, the Celts represent this refreshing breath of air of mystery. They represent a tradition filled with awe and connection to creation. And that tradition stands in stark contrast to the religious options that maybe some of you and me were raised with. And because we just don't know so much about the faith of our ancestors, so the Celts hold an appeal. They do for me. They call out to our deep human need for mystery, for something bigger than ourselves, for the world to not be quite so cut and dried. And those instincts, I think, are good and right. They keep our hearts soft, because the world is bigger than any list of rules. The world we inhabit is mysterious, awe-inspiring, and interconnected in ways we cannot begin to imagine. And we can either create God in our own small image or stand in awe of a God that's too big to fit in our neat boxes or our limiting beliefs. It turns out that the single best source for Celtic theology and spirituality and practice comes from women. Who else is not surprised? The ability to hold several truths simultaneously valid. A kinship, an awareness of life coming to us, birth coming through us. Very Celtic. And women, of course, got this. For among women were found songs for childbirth that blessed the baby and the mother with words that the rest of the world would have reserved for a priest. Now, this is something I think is an interesting mark of the Celtic path. Everyone is priestly. Everyone can call on the kinship with the earth. Everyone can speak a blessing to another and have the same relevance and authority. It doesn't have to depend on a gatekeeper clergy. These blessings were spoken while baking or sewing or milking the cow or receiving a child who'd been out playing for the day. It was proper to speak a blessing of worth. And in doing so, it was not only affirming the one you spoke to, but it was staying in kinship with Creator. I too am a vehicle for communicating some of the good that's beyond us into this mortal world. And yet, for hundreds of years, the dominant form of religion in the West has been a Christianity that's mostly lived out in our heads. You won't find that in the Celtic path. Belief, sometimes, if we're not careful, is more an intellectual assent to a set of reality statements and rules. The heart, if we're not careful, doesn't feature much in that mindset. And the body is downright suspect, being the source of, as some were taught, lust and gluttony and a host of other sins. Sometimes in religion, the natural world is completely ignored. I remember being so taken going to Yosemite Valley with Jane years ago. And in the midst of that valley, someone had constructed a chapel church building in the middle of it, so you would enter the building to pray and not see the cathedral God had already set up all around you. What's wrong with this picture? Yeah, sometimes the natural world gets ignored instead of entered into. That's why I respect the architecture and presence of this building that has you always be aware, what is outside informing us, even as we speak of theology and social action inside. So is it any wonder that people in an orthodox path can become tired of saying yes to things that don't make a lot of sense, like substitutionary atonement? Jesus had to take a hit for us. Who started that? And being cut off from the natural world. Instead, the popularity of the Celtic path here in recent years seems to show people who want to be rooted in the goodness of the created order. That there's a flesh and blood goodness to our bodies and the natural world we get to live in. You know, if there's one lesson I've taken away from my interest in the Celtic path, it's this, that the spirituality of our Celtic ancestors was rooted into everyday stuff. You didn't have to get dressed up for it. You just had to have your eyes open. Spirituality wasn't for church or for the yoga studio. It was for waking up, baking bread, doing work, a blessing spoken while washing dishes or clothes, meeting friends, taking rest. But a lot of it seemed to incorporate a spoken blessing, something to acknowledge, to lay out intention. Oh, Creator, in the loaf of bread I've just placed in the oven, may that touch the deepest appetite of those who will join me for supper. You see that? Making sacred all that's mundane. The tree felled for furniture? Okay, that's God's good creation. I'll pray as I sit in the chair. The grain that becomes bread, holy because God made it for us. Your life is sacred and precious, and the divine is just waiting in every moment to encounter you, playfully calling you out. So to recap, what calls out to me in the heart of the Celtic path? One, it's a path for seeing humans and the rest of creation as agents of blessing. We have more authority than we thought we did, pointing to intrinsic worth in ways that maybe the church has historically missed. Two, it sees our relationship with the divine as original blessing, not original sin. Can you appreciate the difference? Original blessing. From the John Philip Newell reading that I offered earlier in the hour, he refers to us being in the garden, or the garden is still in us. And, thinking in Christian mythology, the notion of the Garden of Eden, Christian and Jewish mythology, that was the place supposedly where relationships were in alignment. And there was a capacity to tolerate and live with each other, full of discovery and wonder. Newell, I like that image. The garden didn't go away. We weren't banished from the garden. The garden is still in us. Again, 4, the Celtic path that I'm drawn to sees spatial lines, like even in the dirt when we're walking a path, is permeable. It's open to our crossing over into some deep aha. There are thin places all around us, linking us to ancestors, to revelation. Why, a grove of oak trees might just be a portal for you to having a great leap of growth or connecting with someone who has already passed on. The spiritual path of the Celts sees mystery in our spiritual mortal lives. Mystery is being just as important, if not more important, than certitude. And finally, I'm drawn to the Celtic way because it sees this great equality between men and women when it comes to authority and wisdom, leading one another into greater light. I'm living into this. I don't know about you, but I find as I age, I have more of a hunger for mystery, for whatever will be has meaning and blessing in it. Can I notice it? Confessionally, I think I am becoming more Druid in my later years. And by that, I more see landscape as a canvas where God and God's messengers are breaking out with a word or a symbol or something for me to notice. It's that rocks and trees and birds really are talking back. It's what the Celtic poet John O'Donohue means when he speaks of landscape. And let me do a short little promotion here. If you know the name of Krista Tippett, great writer and an interviewer, for years and years, she moderated a program called On Being. I heartily encourage you to go home today or sometime this week, go to the YouTube interview between she and John O'Donohue. It is so rich, and you will so get a grounding for the Celtic path way more articulately than I'm attempting to do here. But what John O'Donohue means when he speaks of landscape is that when we walk down a path or even down a city block of Traverse City, we are not merely walking by dead, inert stuff. Even the weed and the cracks of the sidewalk have a message. It's not dead, inert stuff. Rather, we are passing a community as alive, if not more so alive than we are. Did you know that the Greek root of the word beauty is related to the root calling? Colleen, maybe more in the Gaelic. I want you to think about that a minute. Being in the presence of beauty is not a neutral thing, but it's actually calling you and calling me. It's calling out to us. We are called to be something, do something when in the presence of beauty, to more fully be ourselves. Beauty is not mere entertainment or luxuries or pretty baubles to fill our life with, but it's rather a grounding. It might be a good way for us to experience a walk in the woods, that not only are we curious and quiet as we look around, maybe let us be drawn to something like a fallen tree or something coming up, a new growth, and just, I honor you, I respect what you're doing, I respect that you lived a life. But before leaving the woods, maybe the question to ourselves could be, now that I've seen this interconnected community and this beauty, what do I need to take into the rest of my day? That might also be a great question to ask when we've walked through an art museum or heard just a spellbinding piece of music. It blessed me, but what now am I called to in my life now that I've experienced that? That would be very Celtic. In closing, before I get to that, I want to say something else that this has pushed on me in recent months, thinking about the Celtic path. If I am paying attention to beauty and creation speaking, could it make me better at protesting? At speaking truth to power? I think the answer ought to be yes. And I'm kind of growing into that awareness. We in these times who need to stand up for social justice and protest, we are better off when we've tended to our spirit by letting beauty ground us along the way. Protesters need to walk in the woods and not just march on the streets. So in closing, I recommend that you listen and read and be curious. Many of you are already that. I got to sit in your library for a few minutes this morning, and I too was moved again. There's a lot of great thinkers, even around this path, that are in some of your books. I included on your insert page a couple of entries that I think are really powerful. Newell's book, Christ and the Celts, is a great starting point. Josephine Robertson, the Episcopal priest who I've leaned into for some of my remarks this morning, has written a great book called It's All Sacred. But here's one. I haven't gotten the book yet, but you believe me, I ordered it on Amazon a few days ago, eager to read Jared Anderson's Something in the Woods Loves You. Isn't that a great title? Yeah. There you have it. What is moving in me, what has happened historically, and what I think calls to us more deeply the older we get. May you take whatever you need from these words. Amen.
Would you please rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our closing hymn for today from the Teal Hymnal, number 1068, Rising Green. My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have flamed.
hold hands with your neighbors. As we settle into releasing the flame for today, the words I've selected are also from J. Philip Newell. There is a longing for deep peace in our world today. Raging against this longing are forces we can all feel: fear and fragmentation. But I believe deeper still than fear and fragmentation is the longing to find deep peace. Keep searching.
I end with words again from John O'Donohue. All that is eternal is welcoming you and me into the rest of this day. The field of brightness it creates, offering time for each thing we will need to tend to. So, may you and I have the courage today to live the life that we would love, to postpone our dream no longer, but to do at last what we came here for, and waste our heart on fear no more.